Okay. I feel like 2023 was a mixed bag. A ton of great stuff came out this year, especially in the case of adaptations, such as the Super Mario Bros. Movie, Dungeons & Dragons, and The Last of Us. Meanwhile, others were throwing hissy fits. A ton of people were mad at the DLC for Horizon Forbidden West, all because of a choice that the player could make. I swear, the people that left negative remarks about this are either Xbox players that haven't played the game, or homophobes that haven't played the game. Probably both. First, let's get the obvious out of the way. I don't care about Call of Duty and Assassin's Creed. Honestly, how are games like this still being made?
My speech was actually longer than this year's Call of Duty campaign. What?
I also didn't care for that Avatar game much. Then again, I was never a huge fan of the movies either. Speaking of Avatar, I haven't played that last Airbender game, but from what I've seen, it is offensively bad. Remember the time in the show when Aang fought Heibai the Spirit? By solving a sliding puzzle? Me neither. Haven't played Street Fighter VI nor Mortal Kombat 1, although Mortal Kombat 1 did have a very good trailer.
Mortal Kombat!
Even though it's free to play, I refuse to play Honkai Star Rail. Hoyoverse, make a real video game that doesn't empty a person's wallet, please. That Lord of the Rings Gollum game was apparently so good that the developers wrote an apology letter to everyone that bought the game. Same with Redfall. That RoboCop game looked pretty funny. Pizza Tower? Dang, this game looks crazy! Sonic Superstars delivered a great sense of wonder, but no speed. No Starfield from me either. Sorry. Also, a Counter-Strike 2 came out, and I didn't even learn about it until after it came out. Didn't play Fire Emblem Engage or Pikmin 4, although this was the year when the Switch became the ultimate machine for the Pikmin games, so maybe I'll play them sometime. And the biggest game that I missed out on this year was Baldur's Gate 3. I've heard tons of great things about it, so maybe I'll pick it up at some point, but it just never piqued my interest. There was this funny mission where a gnome got launched from a windmill, though. The year still started pretty strong, with Hogwarts Legacy. First of all, does anyone remember when a group of baboon-brained Twitter users tried to boycott this game? And how that hilariously failed? This game broke records on Twitch, and for good reason. This game is a dream come true to any Harry Potter fan. Being in the wizarding world, casting spells, flying around on a broom, flying on the back of a griffin. It's a magnificent game that I had a lot of fun with. Two problems with it though. One, the story and voice acting are serviceable, but nothing special. Here's what an average, everyday conversation sounds like in this game.
Actually, I found all of the keys and opened my house chest.
Oh, wonderful. What did you find?
I found a rather interesting costume.
Brilliant. Whew. Well, thank you for solving that mystery for me.
Two, the characters always talk about how the dark arts are a sin and no one should ever practice it, even on your enemies. When in reality, the player already does things to enemies worse than the killing curse. You can freaking strike enemies with lightning, turn them to stone, and shatter them into a million pieces? Toss them around like ragdolls? And Avada Kedavra is worse. How? This was a huge year for re-releases, and I was finally able to play Red Dead Redemption 1 for the first time. I can easily see why this game is beloved by many. I haven't beaten it yet, but I will eventually. Metal Gear Solid also had a re-release this year onto current-gen devices via the Master Collection, but what you need to understand is that these are just ports from the HD Collection. This was a huge misstep by Konami since they had the opportunity to add more accessibility options to this re-release, like, I don't know, remappable controls, and I could swear that the Switch versions of these games not only have a locked frame rate, but also audio problems?
I just didn't expect a world-class designer of military technology to be so cute.
I can't believe I'm being hit on by the famous Solid Snake.
But if we're willing to disregard how outdated and lazy this collection is, they are still pretty good games, and still some of the best stealth games that exist to this day. That is, until you remember it's owned by Konami. Konami, please, please, please let the Snake Eater remake be good. Space. The final frontier. In the great unknown of the sci-fi genre, There were 3 big releases this year. One was a remaster, one was a remake, and one was a sequel. First, Metroid Prime Remastered. You need to understand that I have no nostalgic connection whatsoever to this game, so I experienced it for the first time this year. And wow. Just wow. If you're a fan of games like Doom or Halo, you would definitely like this game. Plus, it's pretty fun to turn into Samus's morph ball and roll down steep surfaces. Rolling around at the speed of sound. Then there's the remake of Dead Space. I had my reservations about this because this is EA we're talking about here, but I was amazed at the level of hard work that the developer Motive put into this. The story surrounding the mystery on the USG Ishimura is surprisingly deep for survival horror. The game looks and sounds like God, and the presentation is far more cinematic than ever before. I'm honestly astounded that I'm saying this, but EA actually did something great this year. Then EA did something that wasn't as great. Let's talk about Star Wars Jedi Survivor, the long-awaited sequel to Fallen Order, and I think it's somehow worse than the first game overall. Don't get me wrong, the combat has been given a major overhaul with the inclusion of new stances available to Cal. But this game has technical issues like you wouldn't believe, and it has the most predictable and blandest Star Wars story ever. There were tons of things that I saw coming, a few things that I didn't see coming, but in the end, you've got a game that is not worth the full price. If you must play this game, I'd wait for a sale or for the price to drop. And my biggest pet peeve of this game, how can you run the game in performance mode, but when a cutscene triggers, the frame rate drops? I swear, I was afraid my PS5 would break the whole time I was playing this. I will say this, it's not the worst Star Wars game ever made, but no Star Wars game that EA puts out will ever be as good as Star Wars Republic Commando. It's just staggering for EA to release this a few months after their amazing remake of one of the greatest survival horror games of all time. Speaking of survival horror, a remake of Best Resident Evil game came out this year. I already knew that this game was coming with all of Capcom's rapid-fire remakes of previous games in recent years, and wow, this game still holds up. I'm not joking when I say this is the greatest Resident Evil game ever, and this remake looks and plays incredibly well. I'd even say that the remake is perfect, until you remember that this game is 2/3 an escort mission. But the whole escort part is much more tolerable in the remake compared to the 2005 original. Ashley, why are you sitting like that? This is a shooting range. Don't get me wrong, this remake is perfect, but part of me will always want to go back to the 2005 original. How did the Nintendo Switch do this year? Tears of the Kingdom? There was F-Zero 99, and I'm honestly amazed that Nintendo still does better Battle Royale games because this game is a blast. Tears of the Kingdom? I finally got to play Xenoblade Chronicles 2 this year. New players beware, this game is heavily tutorialized. Tears of the Kingdom though. Super Mario RPG, a remake of an SNES classic that is one of the greatest turn-based RPGs of all time. Does things differently with its turn-based combat like timed button presses to deal bonus damage, and Gino is a force that cannot be stopped. Just be careful not to trip. Tears of the Kingdom! Okay, I'll get to Tears of the Kingdom, alright? I am a Zelda fanboy, so let me tell you, I was not disappointed. A lot of people were worried that this was just going to be a Breath of the Wild 2.0, and to be fair, they're not wrong. It's the same exact world from Breath of the Wild, yet different at the same time. The surface world has a bunch of new surprises waiting in store for you. There's also the newly added Sky Islands, the depths beneath the surface, and the return of classic Zelda dungeons brought a nice breath of fresh air. I could swear there were times that I felt like I was playing through a Studio Ghibli movie. The greatest thing about Tears of the Kingdom is its sense of creativity. This game has some of the greatest abilities that Link has ever had. The Ultra Hand ability allows you to build contraptions that can help you out with traversal and combat. The Fuse ability can help you strengthen your weapons and shields. And the Ascend ability can help you reach high places very fast. And to be honest, I enjoyed the story just as much as Breath of the Wild's story. It's not great. I still think the best Zelda stories are from Skyward Sword and Twilight Princess, but the story in Tears of the Kingdom is serviceable. And plus, I can't help but compare Zelda in Tears of the Kingdom to the Zelda in Skyward Sword in a lot of ways. The Zelda in Skyward Sword was an immortal that gave up being immortal. Zelda in Tears of the Kingdom, she gives up being mortal to become immortal. Because, spoiler alert, she turns herself into a freaking dragon. I didn't even learn this at first by watching all of the Dragon Tier memories. I learned this once I had an opportunity to dive onto the Light Dragon, and once I saw the Master Sword, I immediately thought, holy crap, this dragon is Zelda. I was jaw-dropped. This game is up there with the greats of all Zelda games, and I had a lot of fun with it. Now, I'm not sure if you know this about me, but I kinda became a My Hero Academia superfan this year, so I decided to touch base with some MHA video games. My Hero One's Justice 2, an arena-style fighting game, and the newest game that came out this year, My Hero Ultra Rumble, a 24-player battle royale. Once you get a grasp for how it plays, it's actually kind of fun. I certainly had a lot more fun with this rather than a certain battle royale game that I shall refuse to name right now. And this game is free to play, so anyone can pick it up. Just for the love of God, don't spend any money, alright? But if it came down to what the better game was, I'd say My Hero One's Justice 2 is the way to go if you want the best My Hero Academia game out there. It has a massive roster of characters and is kinda complex. Just a fair warning, the online multiplayer can get pretty intense. Oh yeah, the story missions for Overwatch 2 came out this year. There are 3 missions. Blizzard, this is not a major content update. This is 3 drops of water into a bucket. It's pretty obvious after playing it that Blizzard plans on releasing the story mode episodically, and that is unacceptable. Finish your game before you release it. Seriously, Blizzard, what have you been doing ever since you first announced this game back in 2019? Oh right, sexualizing your female employees. Okay, I need something positive to talk about now, so let's talk about Spider-Man 2. I honestly think it's absurd that this game was nominated for 7 awards at the Game Awards and didn't win any of them. This game is a huge step up compared to the previous 2 games. The combat and traversal have been greatly improved, and the story was presented much better.
Look who it is!
What? Where am I? Spider-Man!
Jonah, my sunshine! You okay?
Help! I've been abducted!
I think it's safe to say that, alongside Batman Arkham City, this is the single greatest superhero video game ever created. I'm gonna say it. I'm just gonna say it. Spider-Man 2 was robbed here. And then there's Super Mario Bros. Wonder, which was released on the same day as Spider-Man 2. Man, that was a fun weekend. Once you boot up the game, I have to ask, who looks at this roster and thinks, yeah, I'm gonna play as Mario? In any case, this game is trippy as balls. You got Singing Piranha Plant level, Infinite Superstar level, Stampeding Bull level, Rolling Hippo level, freaking Starlit Walkway level with Koopas roller skating around. And of course, can't forget about the new Elephant power-up, which makes your character faster, stronger, and slightly less attractive. Although Toadette's kind of adorable as an elephant. If you love Mario, you'll love this game. Persona 5 Tactica. I always love me some Persona 5, so this game was a big welcome. It's a turn-based tactics RPG similar to Fire Emblem and XCOM. You can hit opponents with status effects to make them more vulnerable to weaknesses, knock enemies into other enemies, position your party members in a triangle formation, and hit all the enemies caught in the crossfire. There's so much to rack your brain about. Just be careful what direction you hit enemies in, because you can hit your own teammates.
Damn side!
Though the story's nothing to write home about, I genuinely loved the art style. A chibi version of Persona 5 characters is a nice change, and it is extremely adorable. Another high that I've been on this year was Final Fantasy. I was never a huge Final Fantasy guy before this year. The only games I've played in the past was Final Fantasy IX and the Final Fantasy VII Remake. The original 6 Final Fantasy games from the NES and SNES era were games that I've always wanted to play, and I was finally able to play them thanks to the Pixel remasters. And I enjoyed every single one, except for Final Fantasy II. The 2 that I enjoyed the most were Final Fantasy V and VI. 5 was the most fun thanks to its extremely customizable job system, and 6 has the best story and characters. P.S. Celeste is easily my favorite Final Fantasy character. Although they straight up pull a Star Wars the first time Locke meets Celeste.
A little short for a stormtrooper.
Huh? Oh, the uniform.
I'm Luke Skywalker, I'm here to rescue you.
And the music. Oh, the music was incredible. Continuing with the Final Fantasy train, I got started on Final Fantasy XIV this year. And I know, I'm late to the party, give me a freaking break. This is an MMO that I can easily see myself sinking a lot of hours into in the future, and I haven't even been invested in any MMOs within the past decade. For reference, the last MMO that I was extremely into was LEGO Universe. And All us LEGO fans know how well that turned out. And of course, the newest Final Fantasy we were introduced to this year, Final Fantasy XVI. Remember when I said Final Fantasy VI has an incredible story? Well, I forgot to mention that it's dark too, and Final Fantasy XVI hits a lot of the same vibes. But I mean that in a good way, because the cinematography and story in 16 is fantastic. The music is fantastic, the combat is fantastic, the setting is fantastic, and the giant monster fights, holy crap! I may not have finished it yet, but if you're a fan of Final Fantasy, this is definitely worth picking up. And so, the deciding factor, what is my game of the year? It's Tears of the Kingdom all the way for me! Here's the thing, Persona 5 Tactica, Final Fantasy 16, Dead Space, even Spider-Man 2 came as a close second for me, but I doubt I would have had as much fun with those games as much as I have with Tears of the Kingdom. If there's a Zelda game that comes out in the year, then odds are high that it would be my game of the year. Breath of the Wild was one of the greatest launch titles ever, and Tears of the Kingdom builds upon everything that Breath of the Wild did and makes it better. And I highly recommend you play both of these games back to back to experience everything that this rendition of Hyrule has to offer.